Good afternoon, Cheryl. How are you?
Good afternoon, Diana. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So today you will meet Cheryl Contee, who is one of our remarkable women storytellers at the upcoming Third Act Quest storytelling event at the end of October. So before I engage in what will be a very interesting and inspiring conversation with Cheryl, I want to give you a little bit of a backdrop on this amazing woman and share a little bit about her path and a little bit about what she's doing. I would say, just in a nutshell, that you are working to create a world in which women can succeed as business leaders. So most recently, as the Chief Executive Officer at the Impact Seat Foundation, you have used your vast experience in startup entrepreneurship and community engagement to lead Impact Seat's portfolio companies and funds to success. The resources that you provide for underrepresented founders is extremely important and is a part of building what you would call a new economy. You're also the award-winning founder and chair of Do Big Things, which is a digital agency that centers on Cheryl's passion to create new tech and new narrative for a new era focused on causes and campaigns. Her Amazon best-selling book, and I love the name of this book, is called Mechanical Bull: How You Can Achieve Startup Success. I would say for anyone, but especially someone from what we would call a non-traditional founder group, being a woman or a minority, it is a must read. Cheryl shares her own entrepreneurial journey, launching count them, three startups, despite being a very non-traditional founder, as you called yourself. You know, what I love in the name, the Mechanical Bull, comes from the fact that, as I think it was said on your dust jacket, that Silicon Valley can be a wild ride for an entrepreneur, especially if you're a woman, a minority, or both. So your previous entrepreneurial adventures included being CEO of Fission Strategy, which brought Silicon Valley startup culture to the world's leading causes and campaigns. She's the founder of Attentive.ly. I don't know if you say that attentively. I love that. The first tech startup with the Black female founder to be acquired by a NASDAQ company. And that is huge. That is huge for anyone that's been in that startup world. You'd really resonate with that. Cheryl's also been the national board chair for Netroots Nation, a senior advisor for Astria, and the first portfolio company board member of New Media Ventures. So, wow, you have and continue to really follow your heart and what is a deeply seated purpose. And I applaud it and want to learn a lot more about your path. But before we do that, would you share a little bit more with us about the Impact Seat Foundation?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's almost my life story right there. You know, there's a lot there, and I think what you'll hear, in the thread, the golden thread that connects all of those is service, is really, trying to, be present in this really challenging time of so many transitions on a civilizational scale. And that's part of what the Impact Seat Foundation is all about. I mean, we're still living in a world in which last year in 2021, only 2% of venture capital went to female founders. And yet women buy 75 to 85% of everything. I mean, that math don't add up, Diana. The dog won't hunt. So it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so, bringing, some rationality, right? I mean, in this future, women hold up half the sky. We're not going to propel ourselves into a future without, the vision, the ideas, and the energy of women. And so the Impact Seat Foundation is all about, how do we make sure that, women are not only reaching leadership, but once you're in leadership, I always say, it's hard to become a good leader. it's even harder to remain a good leader. How do we make sure that women who are in leadership in business have all of the resources they need to not only continue to perform at the highest level, but also inspire and broaden the field of women coming up behind them?
So in your experience, both personally and then with the impact seat, what are you finding are the most powerful methods of shifting or making a change in that, 2%? What is it up to us to change and to push through, or is there effect you're seeing at the funding level by the efforts that you have been able to pursue with the impact seed?
Absolutely. Well, we are pursuing and pioneering a concept that we call full stack philanthropy. So that includes impact investing. And what people don't know is that our founder, Barbara Clark, is one of the single largest, if not the single largest individual investor in women-led startups in America. There's so many cases in which, she was the first check, or, made sure that, the funds not only were launched, but, had enough capital to then, spread across as many female founders as possible. So, impact investing is a really big part of what we're doing. And we have companies in our portfolio in which we hope when they exit, those funds, we can reuse them, right, to invest in more women.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
Right. And we're encouraging investors to think about that too. And then, look, we would love for investors to consider investing in, donating their shares, in these impact companies to the Impact Seat Foundation or other foundations like them, because you get the credit, the tax credit, not on the amount, say you bought shares that are worth now $2,000. You actually get the tax credit when in the exit. If they sell for $10,000, you get a $10,000 tax break. And then everybody wins, right? Everybody
Yes.
wins. So impact investing, very important part of our portfolio. And part of it is demonstrating by action, how successful these companies actually can be. And then, of course, there's grant making. We've done a lot of sponsorships this year to bring people together in this time when people are still, looking towards, what is it going to take to build out that new economy? Women have been hit so hard in COVID. How can we really start to plan the revitalization of women's economic development, as we push forward post-COVID? And then finally, advocacy. Obviously, this is a time, particularly in the United States, when the rights of women are at stake, and people, talk about reproductive rights, certainly in the personal, the personal context, but it also has an economic context, the ability for women to choose, if, and when they reproduce has a direct impact on, their educational trajectory, and their career trajectory. So, full stack philanthropy, combining those three concepts, impact investing, grant making, and advocacy, is the cornerstone of our approach.
It's beautiful. I was recently reading a powerful book called The Great Work of Your Life. And it's Stephen Cope's interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. And the story of Susan B. Anthony is one that I had not fully understood until reading this book. But at the core of the reason I just brought this up is at the core of it, it speaks to not only perceiving and understanding your calling and where your gifts are and where you need to put your energy, but it's by focused, intentional, and unified action to do this. So you have clearly, over the course of your life as an entrepreneur, and then always, having attentiveness to the community and how you can make an impact. But it seems like you've arrived, as you said, this golden thread, you've arrived at just like the perfect seat, at the impact seat for you, So talk to me a little bit, if you would, personally about a defining moment in your life, or there may be several. I know there are probably several defining moments. Talk about one that's really propelled you along this path.
Absolutely. Well, certainly 2020, I think, was a really big and tough year for just about everyone on the planet. And I definitely walked away, and I think many people, the Great Resignation is and the classic example of that, thinking, am I really in the right place? Am I in the right place in the right time to do the best possible work I can? And at the time, I said, I don't know that I am. I think that I'm needed elsewhere. So that's partly, how, I came to the Impact Seat Foundation. When I first launched, the company that's now Do Big Things, we were one of a handful of companies in the causes sector, doing what we did. And now there are quite a few, which is great. We're still one of the leaders, in what we do. But there are, I'm not as unique in that world as I once was. Whereas in the world of impact investing and venture philanthropy, I am very special. There are not very many Cheryls in that world. And so, that creates an opportunity, right? That means that I can be a bridge among, all of these different sectors in which I play. So that's been very exciting. However, I would say probably the biggest, sort of event that led me onto the trajectory or the path I'm on now is when back at Yale, I was a struggling BIPOC scholarship student for sure, and I had to have a work study job as part of my scholarship package, and at the time. I had a job at the art gallery, but it didn't pay that much. So I was looking at, higher paying jobs for sophomore year. And the highest paying job on campus was working in the kitchens. So they were unionized. Power of a union. They made $17 an hour, which was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money now. It's more than the minimum wage. It's a lot of money back then. But Diana, I hate washing dishes. I'd rather, scrub a bathroom with a toothbrush. And also, here I was already going into debt with student loans. I wanted to invest in myself. I felt like, how much could I really learn washing dishes, 20 to 30 hours a week, right?
Oh, man.
So
wow.
Yeah. So I looked at the next highest paying job on campus, which was being what was called a computer assistant, essentially help desk in the library computer centers. And I want you to guess how much that paid.
Oh my gosh, probably 75% less. I don't know what.
Well, you've actually guessed the most, I think, of anyone. It was literally half as much money. It was $8.50. And, so that was a big turning point in my life, as a 19-year-old saying, like, I know that there's something here. And I know that if there was ever a moment to invest in myself, even though it means that this is a temporary sacrifice, this is that moment, and I don't know, where this is going to lead me, but I know that I'm going to learn a lot, doing this job. Because, really, I wasn't necessarily specially qualified for help desk. I had recently set up my Mac SE, dating myself. So I felt confident. I had that 19-year-old confidence of, like, I set up my own computer. How hard could this be? I was the first BIPOC person to ever apply for the position. I was one of 4 women out of 30 computer assistants the entire 3 years that I did it. But, they recognized a misfit. It was very like Big Bang Theory. You're familiar with right. I mean, like, imagine like nerdier than that. Like, these were the nerds at Yale. Okay. Like, it was a whole, but, they were amazing, and they taught me a lot. And, what I do a lot of talking to students these days. And what I tell them is, look, when I was your age and in college, the job for which I was preparing myself didn't exist yet. And that's probably even more true for you, that the work that you're preparing yourself for isn't even a thing yet. So, figure out what you love. What I love, my major in college was ethics, politics, and economics. Figure out what you love to do, dive deep into it, and layer on technology, because there is no job that will not involve that in some way. And you may find, as I did, that not only do you create, your own job, dream job, but you create, careers for people coming up behind you.
Well, it's such a beautiful building block for your life, and where looking at what you've done across time. It's like, little did you know as you looked for that work study, but you knew. I mean, that's the other thing, is somehow you knew that this was a beautiful building block. It, not only the $8.50 an hour, which helped, but and certainly not a building block to be dishwashing. There was no real advanced future there. So you've had beautiful instinct. Don't you love, as you look back at your life? I mean, that's one of the benefits of being older, is that you've had so many different experiences, good, bad, ugly, whatever, and they all add up to you. And you're able to both celebrate your successes and also almost celebrate your failures because of what they taught you. But somehow we stay on this path, if we're lucky, to be able to stay in touch with that which moves us, right? So I want to dig a little deeper too, to understand your why and understand that which you've stayed steady with, in terms of how you lead from your heart in all that you do and defy. I mean, literally, it takes there are a lot of challenges along the way, what you're supposed to do, what people allow you to do, what invitation you get into boardrooms and things like that. So talk to me how you stayed so steady and strong about this path.
I will tell you, I was meditating when I was in I would say probably mid to late 20s. I was in my bedroom. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, and all of a sudden, Ganesh, the god of abundance, appeared before me. And, in one hand, he had, family, and, in the other, he had, gold coins and dollars, and then a banner unfurled over his head, because he was sitting right across from me, cross-legged, just as I was, and it said service. Basically the message I took, and it was more tangible and palpable than you and I talking right now. I mean, it was like an tiny elephant god was in my room right at that moment. And, I would say, that always stayed with me, that, I would have everything that I needed and wanted, or that, I think that people feel is important in life, but it would be through service. And these days, my why is really, my son Colm. He's 6 now, going on 65. And it's really, these kids under 10, they are a very special generation. I mean, they're coming in hot. They're very wise. They have old eyes. And, I don't know how much, that I'm giving him intellectually, like he's already pretty smart. But I hope that, I can, show him and, kids like him, and prepare a world in which they can be even more successful, than I was.
I just want to reflect right back to you. I actually tire of hearing people complain about or lament the way the world is. Yeah, we've got some, momentous challenges everywhere we look still, thinking of women's rights, period, still. However, having a child, I have an older child, mine's 21, but I was reflecting when you said that, I walked away from this little research symposium she did with about 100 students, all these different research projects they're working on. My mind was blown. I was moved to tears with sense of joy and hope for the future. And it is interesting. It's like it plays such an important, clearly is your son is playing such an important role, but just as it represents possibility, for positive change. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. Generation Z, even the older, I know your daughter is no longer a kid, but, for the sake of this conversation, kids,
Yeah.
these generations coming up behind us, they are not like us. They are superior in a lot of different ways, which is
Well,
what we did, but they're looking to us, for, at least, they don't need us. But I think what we can offer as older people is a sense of, here are the issues, and give them confidence, that they can figure this out, and that there is hope, and that with creativity and hard work and innovation, we can solve these problems if we really want to.
well, it's like anything we do, right? I'm sure each time you started up a company, you have to set the conditions for which it can flourish. So as a mother, you are, and all of us have the responsibility to set up the conditions in the way that they're parented. As you say, whether they need our advice or not, we're setting up the conditions and nurturing and and sharing. So I love that you brought up your son. I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think both for older people, God knows, but also for younger people, the ingredients to success remain compassion, creativity, courage, and the willingness to do things that no one else has done before in order to get results that haven't been achieved before.
So I would love to ask you to share some words of advice. Many women post 50s, 60s, and beyond are lacking confidence, and for good reason in some cases, and for others, just sort of not having the experience to maintain confidence or courage, especially as they get older. And one of the things that the storytelling event is about is helping to inspire resilience, but also to embrace opportunity and to sort of push fear aside when things are still so uncertain for a lot of people and individually at this age. So what kind of advice would you share to perhaps women listening that aren't feeling as grounded and as confident in their capacity to serve or to have a fulfilling life at this point?
Absolutely. I would say trust yourself. In this time, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of disinformation. I've actually worked, in my work with both the Impact Seed Foundation and, with Do Big Things on combating disinformation. But, I think that really assessing your intuition in this time. There's, what people are going to tell you, there's what you're going to hear in the news, there's the memes that you might see on social media. There's a lot of nonsense out there. Deep down, what's true. And neuroscience at this point tells us this. Right. People, I know I was brought up, being told that, logic and decision making came from our frontal, cortex, right? Like the front of our brain, but it actually doesn't. It actually comes from a much older part of our brain that literally synthesizes millions of inputs of data from all over. We're smarter than we think. And, we're taking in information, even when we don't realize it. And so your mind is actually cranking that in a black box, right? Taking in all these inputs, and what the output of that black box is that gut feeling, right? That hunch, intuition, insight. That is literally the smartest part of your brain trying to communicate something very important to you. So, I really rely on that heavily. Women's intuition has gotten a bad rap over the years. And yet, it's in part, I think, because women's intuition is actually very powerful. And so, listen to that powerful part in you. You know what's right. You know what's true. In these times in particular, you'll get very centered in what you know is right and true.
This knowing, the trusting your knowing. That's one of the gifts, I think, of aging, is that we do learn to trust what we know in our hearts. So Cheryl, I'm very excited for you to share more and engage with the audience in the storytelling event at the end of October. But before I say goodbye to you, I would love to hear from you. I ask each of the storytellers this question. If you were to emblazon your life's philosophy on a bumper sticker, what would it say?
I think it would say, if you don't find balance, balance has a way of finding you.
Mm.
And it is, I have seen it over and over again where, people say, well, I knew that I was working too much or, leaning in this, but I just, I thought I would go a little further. And look, whether it's health, whether it's, our family, whether it's our careers, balance will find you if you don't figure out a way to make sure all of the important aspects of your life are being addressed. And then the other one would be, and this is actually directly from my grandmother. She said this actually when she was in her 80s, and it really resonated because it rhymes. That's how I knew it was important. She didn't mean it just came out that way. And she said to me, Cheryl, over the course of my life, I've seen one thing to be true: the things you do one by one come back to you two by two. And that is very true. I mean, I've seen it over the course of my life as well, that, particularly in my career, I try to be of service, to other folks, asking for advice or, providing information. And that has come back to me tenfold in my life.
Beautiful wisdom, and to come from your grandmother. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that and for living that way. It's wonderful. Until the 21st or 22nd of October, I wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you live then to share more.
I can't wait. It's going to be super dope. Tune in, folks. Get lit.
Love it. Have an awesome day.